So I just want to ask you guys, we have been hearing a lot of really exciting and innovative things going on with prevention in our field. And I just want to ask you guys what you're doing with prevention. What's going on?
Yeah, so with our 5 educators that we have on the team, we go into all the schools in North Lake Tahoe and Truckee. There's probably around 20 that we see. And we go into the schools K through 12 and do violence prevention presentations. And so those obviously look different depending on the age group that we're in. A lot of the time in elementary school, we're talking about, stranger danger, recognizing your emotions, and a lot of like assertive communication and positive communication. And then when we get more into middle school, we start talking more about bullying and sexual harassment. And then in high school, we start talking more in depth about sexual harassment, sexual assault, and teen dating violence. So we see every year, every school, K through 12. So if someone started here in kindergarten and they graduate with us, they're going to see us every year in their school talking about different topics, all relating to violence prevention. And then we also do youth empowerment groups at the schools. And those are a little bit more intimate than our classroom presentations. We meet with the counselors at the school, and it's really anyone who is feeling at risk or feel like they need a little bit more support for whatever reason. And it's about 10 students, and we meet once a week for 10 weeks for ideally like an hour or an hour and a half, just to be able to spend more time talking about the issues that are going on in the school or at home that they want to talk about. So a lot of those conversations look like, positive communication, conflict management, self-esteem, body image, and just overall, healthy relationships and respect. And so, so we have the presentations, the youth empowerment groups, and then we also run clubs at Truckee High School and North Tahoe High School. And those are partly what Krystell and Gina are part of at Truckee High School. And then we also run one at North Tahoe High School. And those, anyone can join from the high school who just feels passionate about the cause. So they don't have to be, selected from the counselor like the youth empowerment groups. And it's not, like a presentation in the classroom where we're coming in and talking to them. We meet at lunch and sometimes after school, and it's really just anyone in the high school who's passionate about, promoting healthy relationships and ending domestic violence.
Very cool. Thank you. And I'm curious to learn too from Krystell and Gina. I want to learn more about the club and how you work with students to promote healthy relationships.
Well, we do a lot of flyers, and those go over very well in our school. And those flyers contain mostly clues and kind of like things to watch out for in a relationship that let us know if it's healthy or not. And that we found out that prevents a lot of people from having unhealthy relationships, so from causing trauma on either both sides of the relationship. And that's part of the prevention.
Another thing we've done is posters. We've done a large poster with a statistic on it, and we've kind of just monitored people's reactions, and they're all really surprised at just the amount of domestic violence that happens within like teen relationships. So those always go over really well because it's a learning experience for everyone, and it's something you can just simply read as you're passing by. So it's another way to really get involved in the information and just our message.
Thank you. And Emily, I know we've talked a little bit about how community approaches can really excel at prevention. Tell us a little bit about the work you're doing at the state level.
Yeah, so one of the things that I have the pleasure of really focusing on is really trying to build local programs capacity to promote protective factors. And so that's a way of preventing violence and addressing it on a multi-level. So a lot of what we see happening is that a lot of these standardized curriculums that are designed and made available for violence prevention are often created for really mainstream environments. So a lot of our programs work with communities that are overly impacted by violence or have other types of violence that are prevalent. So what we've been able to do is work with folks to really look at promoting overall protective factors that in turn will prevent all types of violence from happening, which helps to promote healthy relationships and address their community violence if that's what's their main issue. So it's really addressing, it's using intervention strategies of meeting people where they're at, so to help programs meet their community where their community's at and address their primary needs first.
Thank you. And can you explain what some of those protective factors are?
Yeah, so when we talk about risk and protective factors, we talk about them in a few different ways. Let me draw you a socio-ecological
Yes,
model.
let's. And I'm actually going to get closer so you guys can see.
So the socio-ecological model is used a lot in all violence prevention. It's a public health model. So it starts with the individual, and then it goes out from there to relationships or interpersonal. And then from there we go out to community. And from there we go out to our society. So a lot of times intervention services will focus on individual and relationship. An intervention is something that's reactive. It's something that we do after something has happened. So a lot of times giving somebody short-term counseling after a violent incident is an intervention. So a lot of what I do is helping people focus on their work at the community level. So the community level means that we're going to promote some protective factors. So protective and risk factors actually exist in every single level, and they're a little bit different. So a lot of times on a community level, some risk factors, and here we're going to really talk about youth, might be that they have community disorganization, so there's not a lot of structure to their community. If there's a lot of violence or crime in their community, those are some risk factors that mean they're more likely to experience violence. Some protective factors so we don't have a lot of control over risk factors as programs, right? We can't really make those go away, but what we can do is promote their protective factors on all these levels. So on an individual level, we have things like engagement. Community engagement is one of the strongest protective factors for youth. So by getting them involved in feeling like they have a sense of belonging in their school and their community, that actually promotes them and makes them less likely to experience violence. The other really strong protective factor is called socio-political control, and that's where youth actually have a voice in decision making. So any youth advisory boards, or even a club where youth get to decide what their club does, what kind of activities they do, that's one of the strongest protective factors that decreases their likelihood to experience violence in relationship or community level.
Thank you. Yeah. That was awesome. And I'm going to bring it back to the full group in just a second. So based on some of those protective factors, I'd really like to see if there has been a particular approach or an example of that type of enhanced engagement at the I guess high school level within the club that you were discussing earlier, and what type of impact you've seen among students.
Yeah. Well, I guess I could say the biggest impact that I've noticed is every year the club gets bigger and bigger. So when I started this club 3 years ago, there was probably around like 7 or 10 high school students who were there, and Krystell was one of those students. And then last year, when Gina joined the club, there was about 15 students who joined. And then this year we have about 20 active club members. And so it's really positive to see the growth in it. And we also received a grant called Close to Home, who is really focusing on that model. And with that, there's some more requirement that comes with that. Meeting longer periods, having like an 8-hour training, focusing around all of these topics. And with that, I thought it might decrease the amount of students that would come, just because more work had to be involved. But it actually didn't. It actually increased the work. They like learning all of this information, and talking about that model and talking about how we can make a big impact, farther than the school. The first year that Krystell was in the club, one of the things that Krystell really wanted was focusing on the community. And we've been in the high school for so long, and she really wanted to do what's next. Like, how can we expand this club and reach more people than just the student body? And then, luckily we got the grant that allowed us to go out into the community and expand with that model. And so it's, I see the growth in that with just the amount of students who are participating, even with the higher requirement that close to home requires. And getting that training and information actually helps with our sort of activities and events and awareness that we do, because they have that sort of background and knowledge now.
Awesome. And can you tell me a little bit more about the response you've seen in your school and even in the broader community? And this can go to Gina or Krystell.
Most people start talking immediately after, let's say we put up a sign in the hallway that has a statistic that might be shocking to them, and they might turn around to their friend and talk about how they feel. About 21% of the people in our school have had experienced an abusive relationship, and that's really surprising to a lot of people in our high school, since they don't imagine domestic abuse or abusive relationships actually being in the school or taking place around the school.
Okay, so it's an enhanced awareness first.
Yeah.
And Krystell, if you want to mention, so we did a community survey over the summer, and Krystell was one of the students who distributed the survey to the community. And if you want to talk a little bit about the responses that community members gave you, because she interacted with a lot of different age groups during that distribution of the survey.
Most of the people that I talked to were very engaging, and they wanted to take the survey. They wanted to contribute to the community, and it was a really good turnout. And some people were just not even aware that was happening, and it was very informative towards them.
Very nice. Okay, and tell me a little bit about, I guess, the differences you have seen between. We were discussing a little bit about the differences between prevention and intervention, meaning that prevention is really proactive, and intervention means, when something has happened, if someone is experiencing abuse, that student might receive assistance. Can you tell us a little bit about what's available in Gina, for example, in your high school for students who might be already experiencing abuse, and also that really proactive prevention approach, what's being done on that end too?
Yeah, well, one of our maybe outlets for those students is to come to our group meeting, and Cass also has pamphlets with a bunch of just information with numbers and people to contact. So that's also a great way. Yeah, and we have the Wellness Center, which is a really safe place at the school for anyone to go to who's feeling maybe that they might be in an unhealthy relationship, and it's just an outlet for them to go talk about it in a, like I said, safe place.
And we also have school counselors in the school 24/7. So if somebody just feels like they're not in a safe place to talk about their feelings, or in the wellness center or anywhere else with somebody, they can always go to the counselor here.
Awesome, thank you. Can you also talk? I saw the poster board that you guys brought in, highlighting the prevalence of abuse throughout your community, and I'm really interested in actually seeing that. If you guys wouldn't mind showing that, I'm going to bring the iPad over here. So can you tell me a little bit about this project and when you guys started this this whole survey?
Yeah, so at the end of the school year, the students were really interested in doing a community survey. And bringing the awareness to the community, because we've been really focused on the school side of things, and so we really wanted to start branching out to the community, and we thought an easy way to do that was through a survey. And a lot of myths, I guess, around Tahoe is that it doesn't happen here. It's such a beautiful area that violence shouldn't be happening here. It doesn't happen here, and so that's a big sort of taboo, stigma, myth, whatever you want to call it. And the students were really into wanting to break that myth and show that even though it is a beautiful area around here, violence can happen anywhere. And so what we did was, with the survey, we also did this awareness map where we got the statistics from our agency and also from the law enforcement, just to be able to get all the statistics of when domestic violence calls were made out or when any community members came to our agency to seek any sort of services. So once we got that number, we then, got this map of Truckee and blew it up onto a big poster, and then we're able to put those red dots representing community members served in our community who have experienced some sort of domestic violence. And if you zoom in really, really close,
head over there.
In the red dots, some of them you can also see a dot inside the red dot, which represents children who have seeked our services with Tahoe SAFE Alliance. So it just kind of shows the impact that, and it's a nice visual to show that, yes, domestic violence does happen here, and it is something that we should be addressing and talking about. And so that was a really nice visual to go along with the survey to kind of start that process and get them engaged and wanting to start talking about it. So that was a tool that we used to help with that survey process.
Thank you. So now I'd like to ask Emily, I'm interested in learning, is there a particular example? I know that you work with a lot of our member programs, basically agencies all throughout the state who implement prevention strategies. Is there a particular success story that you can tell us about, what they've done to enhance their services?
Yeah, so one of the things that I do is work with a few programs that provide specialized technical assistance. So what that means is I meet with them via phone every month, and then I also go out to their programs and do support visits. So really look at their program, look at their sites, talk about what challenges they're having. And a lot of times what happens, and thankfully I also had the experience of, I've worked in high schools, college campuses, alternative schools, juvenile halls, as well as done violence prevention on a local level. So I'm able to think back to some of those experiences, and whenever you're coming from the outside looking at a program, you're able to see it much more broadly than when you're inside doing it. We all kind of get stuck sometimes, so it's really great to talk through some challenges people are having and recommend other ideas or strategies that other people have tried. So one of the programs that I've been able to work with over the last year actually was really struggling with implementing a bystander intervention model in juvenile hall. So folks in juvenile hall are people who are going to be overly impacted by violence. They're mostly kids of color, and they have some co-occurring issues other than violence happening for them. So bystander intervention is, they were using a set curriculum, which was really designed for a mainstream population, kids who maybe weren't experiencing the type of things that these youth were. And so it wasn't landing well with the youth. They weren't responding to it. They didn't relate to the way the curriculum was designed. So what we were able to do is I was able to work with that program and their staff over the course of several months to consider some alternatives to the activities and to some of the discussion items that really geared it more towards promoting some protective factors and looking at their support networks, and really acknowledging that it's not always safe for them to call 911, that's not safe for every person, and really respecting the youth's autonomy in making their own choices for what was best for them to intervene or not. And through that, they were able to redesign their curriculum that was a much better fit. And actually, they've implemented it now with that group in juvenile hall and have found much greater success. So it's been really great to work with them in that.
That's awesome. Thank you. So I'd like to also ask this question to everyone, really. What do we see for potential in, I think it was the Teen Peace Project. Did I get that right? What do we see for potential, in the upcoming year or even the next few years for the Teen Peace Project?
Yeah. Well,
or why are you excited about the upcoming years for this?
Definitely. So the grant that allows the Teen Peace Project to continue is called Close to Home. And they are really into the idea of community engagement. And they actually have, I don't know if you want to like zoom in on it or I can write it on the board. But they have this like 4-phase model that is really showing kind of where they want us to go in the next 4 years with this club. And this assess part at phase 1 is kind of where we're at right now, you know, gathering and learning information about the community, and that's why we, you know, did the survey and the map to really, you know, bring awareness around to the community and to also get a better sense of the community's knowledge, because how can we start, you know, educating and talking to the community if we don't know where their knowledge is. So that's kind of, you know, where we were over the summer. And then so this school year we're hoping to go into phase 2, the talk phase, where it's really having more one-to-one conversations with community members, figure out where they're passionate at, where their passion lies, and where it is relating to, you know, ending domestic violence and creating an environment where healthy relationships thrive. So through that assess phase, we're hoping this year to start having those sort of one-to-one conversations with community members and looking more in depth to figuring out who is passionate about our mission. And then, you know, hopefully, you know, coming out of that, we would start building some sort of coalition or some sort of, you know, bigger movement with youth and community members who are all, you know, actively wanting to participate in ending domestic violence. That's where that build phase comes into effect. And then once we build that strong coalition with community members and students, that's when we start acting and, you know, hopefully start actively seeing a change in the community where everyone becomes upstanders and, you know, really have that focus of healthy relationships and ending domestic violence in Truckee. So, you know, in short, that's sort of where Close to Home, you know, wants the Teen Peace Project to go, and that's, you know, that's where the club members are wanting to go. So we're kind of right here in between 1 and 2 right now, like I said. So that's really exciting, and the students actually just had an 8-hour training on Sunday to really talk about how do we engage the community on those one-to-one conversations around this sort of taboo subject, and how, you know, how are they leaders in the school and the community in order to have those sort of, you know, in-depth, more intimate conversations. So that's kind of where we're at, and that's definitely what I'm excited about, and hopefully you guys are excited about too, outreaching to the community.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I'd also like to ask this to Krystell and Gina. What do you see, I mean, have you seen a change in the culture on campus since you guys started working in this club? Have you seen a cultural difference in the community as well?
Well, we have been seeing changes. People are more aware of the signs of unhealthy relationships, and people are it's more natural for people to talk about it now than before. It was like something that was never talked about, that it was not like a mainstream thing to talk about. So now it's more safe for them to talk about it at school with their friends or with their parents or with anybody around.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think it's definitely easier to talk about, and especially when we're implementing, whether it be our campaign, just kind of spreading awareness. People are more open to like accepting what we're talking about.
Right.
So it's definitely a big change.
Awesome. And Emily, I know that you have some experience with the Close to Home model as well. Does that pose some really kind of exciting, you know, options for programs as well?
Yeah, I think Close to Home is definitely an exciting thing to see that funders are funding. So it's nice to see a focus on a strategic project like that. I think traditionally the funding streams for prevention have been based on numbers. So it's been, you need to reach 500 students in any capacity. So it's been really focused on awareness campaigns, on doing one-time classroom presentations. And so I think what we've seen is that those increase awareness but don't necessarily prevent people from experiencing violence. Like we can say that, you know, we have domestic violence advocates who experience relationship violence all the time. So their awareness doesn't necessarily prevent them from experiencing that. So how do we go deeper? Particularly with youth and with our communities, there's such an opportunity to think about the continuum of intervention and prevention. There's so many opportunities. And so I think Close to Home is one of those that gives a really strategic, evidence-based model of how to assess, how to plan, how to really ask your community, whatever your community is, whether it's a campus or a larger community, what it is that they need and what's important to them, and really let them drive the result. So then you have this buy-in, and it has more sustainability in your community. It's not dependent on one agency or one person, that it really is fluid and continues to live. And so I think that to see a funder really deciding to invest in a 3-year project and allow somebody the time to plan and think through a strategy is really important, and really shows this shift in understanding evidence-based models about impact and strategy versus numbers.
Thank you. Okay, so we are just approaching 4:30, so I am going to end our Periscope just about now. I really want to thank everyone for participating. I think we had a really wonderful discussion, and we would encourage folks to visit the California Partnership to End Domestic Violence's website to find out more about what we're doing for prevention. And also, can you guys give out some of the important websites for your organization and the Teen Project piece as well?
Yeah, so Tahoe SAFE Alliance has a Facebook page, Tahoe SAFE Alliance. We also have a website, TahoeSafeAlliance.org. And the Teen Peace Project also has a Facebook page that shows a lot of the stuff that we're doing, the awareness that we're doing in the school and community. It also has a link to our survey if you want to take our survey. You don't have to be a resident of Truckee to take the survey. It can be anyone. And let's see what else. I think Tahoe SAFE Alliance also has a Twitter account at Tahoe SAFE, I believe. And do we have an Instagram account? We do have an Instagram account. I'm not quite sure how to.
That's okay. Folks can visit the website, right? And they can find you there.
And get all of that information.
Awesome.
So definitely the website, TahoeSafeAlliance.org, can be your starting point. And you can like us on Facebook, either Tahoe SAFE Alliance or the Teen Peace Project.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.